The day she was hauled into the heart of Dust Creek Village, shackled at the wrists and grit tangled in her locks, nobody uttered her name. Not even the fellow who swore he possessed her. He dubbed her the mute Comanche, as though her quietness stripped away her soul, as if erasing who she was somehow justified the brutality. But the throng of pioneers, cattlemen, and renegades assembled for the sale didn't require labels to gauge her value. They viewed her as a thing, a hex, an echo of a conflict they'd never grasped. And as the crier positioned himself at her back and bellowed, "Half off!" not a soul piped up with an offer. Even the neediest soul held back from lifting a finger. The mute Comanche lass gazed at the grimy road, her expression blank, her gaze vacant, not from fright, but from something profounder, a cavernous sorrow that turned folks' stares aside. She didn't resist, she didn't utter a word. She merely stood there, like whatever horrors they'd inflicted had claimed all but her pulse. The crier's temper flared, his features twisted beneath the strain of Flop's snarling tales to rile the bunch. That she was a sorceress, that she'd witnessed her entire clan butchered, that she was doomed and voiceless from some shadowy rite. Nothing sparked a wager. Murmurs drifted through the group like mist. Some claimed she'd strangled a pale trooper with her own grip before they snared her. Others whispered she hadn't let out a peep in weeks, not even under the lash, and that her hush was a sign of lunacy. But one fellow lingered at the fringe of the gathering, arms crossed, brim pulled low, eyeing not the bidding, but her. Eyeing how her gaze didn't hunt for pity, or flight, or even oblivion. He spotted what others missed. Not insanity, not ferocity, but surrender so profound it cloaked her like a shield. His name was Jacob Hale, a reserved ranch hand with a gash along his chin and a name for uttering no more than necessary. He wasn't wealthy, and he wasn't saintly, but when he hoisted his hand and tossed the lone stake, the hamlet hushed, baffled by the vision of a bloke deliberately claiming what nobody else craved, even at bargain rate. Some chuckled, some jeered, some cautioned him he'd rue squandering silver on a doomed lass, but Jacob stayed mum. His stare never strayed from her, not when they unfastened her wands, not when she lurched ahead and dropped to her haunches, not when she offered no gratitude, no glance's way, no nod to liberty or bondage. Just quiet, dense, and unyielding. Folks, if this dusty drama's got you hooked, smash that like and subscribe so we can keep these Wild West whispers coming your way. Oh, and where are you tuning in from this time? The desert? Your couch? Let me know below. Jacob inked the deed, gripped the cord bound to her wrists, and led her past the mob, brushing off the glares. He didn't yank her, he didn't shove her, he just ambled, and she trailed, the soil gulping their tracks as if bent on wiping the scene clean. He held his tongue till they hit his mount. "You're not headed where he figures you are," he muttered, nodding back at the crier trailing them. "I'm not holding on to you." She showed no stir, and he hadn't banked on one. Jacob wasn't rescuing her because he figured she'd bloom thankful or spill her tale or tumble into his hold. He wasn't rescuing her because he craved absolution or company or a spark to play the savior. He'd caught a glint in her eyes that roused a recollection he'd never outrun. The stare of one already gone within, yet trudging on, a stare he'd worn once himself after a slaughter the globe shrugged off. He cinched his saddle, sliced the cord from her wrists, and passed her a flask. Sip if it suits, stroll if it calls, linger or leave. I won't bar you. The lass's digits quivered as she clutched the flask, but she didn't raise it to her mouth. She simply fixed on Jacob, probing him, weighing him, eyes dancing like faint glimmers of spark that distrusted the glow. For an instant he reckoned she might break quiet, but she wheeled away and set off towards the vast Badlands. Jacob observed her a spell, long and steady, before easing his horse alongside at a crawl. He didn't dictate her route or her moves, didn't impose route or chatter. He just rode, and for the first stretch in weeks, so did she. By her own whim, not by irons, not by commands, but by volition, even if the trail veered to nowhere. And though neither voiced a thing, the hush between them wasn't choking anymore. It was different. Not calm, not faith, but the seed of a query neither had framed yet. In a world not shaped to resolve it, they pressed on for leagues without a murmur. The terrain around them unfurling into void, a brutal wild that mirrored the burdens they bore. Jacob didn't probe her name, didn't press for her yarn, didn't shatter the barrier she'd raised like a bastion, but he sensed its heft, thick as the sand that stuck to their spurs. That inaugural eve, they hunkered under a cragged ledge, miles from any outpost or path. Jacob kindled no blaze. Flames pulled gazes, and gazes pulled peril. He split a strip of jerked beef with her, set it near without a syllable, and reclined against the rock, peering at the heavens as if they clutched secrets no mortal merited. Hours slipped by before he caught it, the softest noise, a jagged breath like one wrestling a whale under their lungs. He pivoted and spied her bolt upright, limbs curled around her shins, quaking face mashed into her thighs. No sobs, no cry, just the stark, voiceless torment of one replaying a nightmare too vile to stay yesteryear. Jacob didn't stretch toward her. He knew that brand of ache. Contact didn't mend it. Phrases didn't crack it. Only seasons and candor did, and both lay distant. Come morn, they struck the stream. The lass halted sharp, sinking to her knees by the bank, guzzling fierce, dousing her cheeks, scrubbing off the filth, but not the woe. Jacob perched on a toppled trunk close by, feigning blindness to the welts on her arms, the welts on her sides, the pale yet clear shape of a sear near her collar, not from blaze, but from metal seared like stock by brutes who fancied themselves lords of her doom. Only then did Jacob break quiet. The brute who hauled you to the block, where'd he snatch you from? She kept her head down, kept mum. He didn't prod. But as the breeze grew dense with the unvoiced, the lass tilted her chin a touch, and for the first go, she locked eyes with him, not in bewilderment or wariness, but in allowance. She raised a shaky palm and gestured northward, toward the soil of scarred echoes. Jacob dipped his head. We head that course, then. She rose sans delay. Though the way wound to specters and tombs, Jacob tailed her 'cause he wasn't merely loosing her. He was aiding her reclaim the spots where the fetters had sparked, where verity had been entombed in hush. 3 days on, they hit the wreckage of her hamlet. What brimmed with breath was now naught but charred beams, strewn skeletons, shattered clay, and quiet weightier than her own. She paced deliberate, each stride ripping gashes Jacob couldn't spy. Then she paused at a modest heap of rocks, stacked with care, as if one soul had strived to grant grace where fate had snatched it. She dropped to one knee and laid her palm on the cairn, and this time Jacob caught her tone, not in syllables, but in a deep, fractured keen, a gash slipping via exhale. It gunned him, fiercer than any howl might. He grasped then her quiet wasn't willed, it was imposed, thrashed into her. The troopers who'd stormed her settlement moons back weren't heeding decrees. They were stalking sport. They'd seized what they lusted, torched what they loathed, muzzled what they dreaded. She'd beheld her sire gunned down, her dam hauled to the pyre, her wee sibling carted off. When she'd wailed, they'd clubbed her windpipe with a musket stock till the noise faded, till she couldn't summon aid, couldn't damn the fiends who'd razed her realm. Her timber was the prime theft. Her liberty followed. Jacob felt the ground sway underfoot. He wasn't stunned by the savagery. He'd witnessed brutes sink lower, but he reeled from her endurance, from her knack to stride, inhale, persist, after being gutted and hawked like herd. He yearned to voice something, anything, but his throat felt futile. In a spot where reckoning had never trod, the lass spun abrupt, peering beyond Jacob to the skyline. A grit plume swelled. She stiffened, gaze ballooning with dread that wanted no cipher. The crier had peddled her low, but he'd still bled coin, and sorts like that didn't swallow setback mute. Jacob gained his feet, palm on his sidearm, thoughts churning. Bolt, he urged her. But she rooted. She wasn't daunted by demise. She was daunted by recapture. Jacob snagged her arm, tugged her after a tumbled barrier and held. 5 riders, tooled for slaughter, not statute. Harlan Voss, the crier, spearheading, his bellow rolling through the debris. You reckon you can just snatch what's mine, Hale? That savage trash is worth more to me than your wretched hide? Jacob held fire. He surged from shelter, iron level, stare pinned. The lass hunkered, pulse hammering like gale in her ribs. Voss cackled. "You ain't got a clue what she's wrought, what she be." Jacob shrugged it off. "She ain't yours," he stated, tone like forged iron. The clash that ensued wasn't drawn out. Jacob claimed the turf. He claimed the hush. He claimed zilch left to forfeit. When the haze settled, Voss and his crew sprawled still, and Jacob, gashed, drained, yet upright, wheeled to the lass. She wasn't weeping, wasn't shuddering. She advanced on him, measured, knelt to his flank, and for the inaugural set, her palm over his breast, not as grace, not as tie, but as sight that he'd beheld her, not as thrall, not as an emblem, but as flesh and blood. She parted her lips, no tone, but she craved no timber to convey. Her gaze managed. Jacob inclined his head. They interred the fallen beneath the rubble, not for glory, but to seal a verse the globe scorned. As they spurred off, the lass spared no backward peak. Her hamlet was cinders, her moniker was vanished, but her shush was no more shackles. It was a blade hammered in torment, honed by candor. And though Jacob reckoned she might never sound again, he also reckoned her saga rang louder than any timber the globe had schemed to pilfer. And there you have it, wanderers. That's the end of our dusty trail through silence and steel. If this story stirred your soul or left you breathless, give it all the hype. Like if it hit hard. Subscribe for the next round of raw frontier fire. Share it with a friend who's got that wild heart, and drop a comment with your favorite moment. Let's build this campfire bigger together. What's your take?